Hello everyone. So I just wanted to thank Karen S. for sending me a link to the Dogma Debate. I've never heard that show before, and Aronra was on there, and they had as a special guest, phone-in guest, Sye Ten, and I thought it was fantastic. It was really nice to hear finally someone not allowing Sye to get away with his shenanigans and to keep pulling him back to questions that have been answered or asked and not answered, and yet a little bit better than the time that Sye was on the Magic Sandwich Show, I think it was, and Aaron had some blown out vocal cords and was shrieking and wailing. He was basically trying to do the same thing as he did on the Dogma Debate, but he was not real coherent and sounded pretty rough. The great thing about the Dogma Debate show, I think, was that they kind of revealed and uncovered Sye's real method of revelation. That basically, essentially, it's just scripture. And I think that's really interesting. Aaron pointed out that Sir Isaac Newton had claimed a special extra-biblical divine revelation, and that he had said that there is no such thing as the Trinity, right? It's not a triune entity, that Jesus Christ is not God. And of course, this goes against what Sye Ten would believe, and Sye did say as much. And when they asked him for justification of that, they said, how would you counter that? And he said, well, scripturally. And he kept going back to that. Now, the question I would like to pose to Sye, since he said that he would deny that Sir Isaac Newton did have extra-biblical divine revelation, direct revelation from God, I would like to ask Sye, is it possible for an all-knowing, all-powerful creator to provide extra-biblical divine revelation to someone such that they can know it for certain? Seems like a reasonable question, doesn't it? And I think if you're going to answer honestly and logically, as you like to pose to atheists worldwide, you would have to say yes. And you would have no way of countering Sir Isaac Newton's claim, because, especially when you are not claiming an extra-biblical divine revelation yourself. You can't even battle apples with apples. You can't even battle apples with oranges, because all you're talking about is Scripture. So I think that's very important. I think it was great, like I said, to hear people. I like the host of the show kept saying, I will shut this show down. I will end this show now if you don't answer our questions. So I thought it was really great. And they certainly weren't letting Sye get away with his typical obfuscations and redirection tactics. He did sort of take over the show at the beginning. As a guest, he sort of took things over, but they corralled him in pretty quickly. Now, as to the topic that I had planned for this upload, as promised, I'm going to be uploading my commentary on some Sye Ten videos shortly. You could consider this part one, I suppose. And I have changed, however, the videos that I'm going to be using for that series. The main reason is I had chosen a video series, a three-part kind of a lecture, I guess you could say, that Sye gave. It's over 2 hours long, and while there's plenty of content in there, I found there's also a lot of dead air, and it became quite tedious for me to go through all this dead air trying to find the things that I wanted to comment on. And of course, as any of you content uploaders I'm sure know, you don't just listen to the video once. You've got to go over it several times. You've got to back things up. You maybe do some research on the side, and it became quite tedious. What I've decided to do instead is a commentary on the video that is on Sye's YouTube channel, Proof That God Exists, which is a video of the informal talk that he had with Dan Courtney. So Dan Courtney and Sye had a formal debate. Subsequently, Dan had uploaded a video sort of commenting on that debate and some other things after he had attempted to engage some other presuppositional apologists and was unsuccessful. And then he released an edited down version of this informal talk that he had with Sye. So Sye had basically said, I'm not going to debate you, but I will come and chat with you. And so they had arranged that and done it, and Dan had, I think it was about a 34 or 35 minute video uploaded to his channel. Now I think Sye took offense to that because he actually released the same discussion, but he had the audio of the additional 30 some odd minutes that Dan had left out. And so what results is about an hour and 8 minutes or something like that on Sye's channel that has some video and some audio. So the audio, I think, is what Sye released, which is the missing parts of the discussion. And in the beginning, he does have some text. Now, in the text portion of Sye's video, he basically kind of outlines what happened, that they'd had a debate in Syracuse, and that Dan had admitted that he could be wrong about everything he claimed to know, thus giving up knowledge, and thereby giving up his foundation for any future debates with Sye, and really any debates on the presuppositional apologetic at all. Now, I do have a couple of concerns about that, or comments on just the text portion. The first is that Sye says Dan admitted he could be wrong about everything he claims to know. This is a loaded word, and I know it might sound nitpicky, but when it comes to this type of thing, language is very, very important, because I think what's going on here is Sye is trying to paint Dan in a specific light by using the word admitted. So, and this is really important because Sye himself doesn't believe that Dan could be wrong about everything he claims to know. He will say it to him, no, you know things. Okay, so Sye doesn't believe that, yet he uses the word admitted. Now, we could analyze this by changing the action here. We could say, instead of Dan saying he could be wrong about everything he claims to know, we could say instead that Dan says that he killed George. Now, if Dan says that he killed George, and Sye doesn't believe that he killed George, in fact, Sye knows that Dan did not kill George, how would Sye characterize that? Would he say that Dan admitted that he killed George? Or would Sye say Dan says that he killed George, or Dan claims that he killed George? Okay, so if you understand the difference, it's quite important, and I think it's a dishonest tactic, mischaracterizing it like that, especially when Sye doesn't believe in himself. The other thing that I find interesting is the one-way check valve that is presuppositional apologetics. Sye likes to declare, I would call it, Sye likes to run around throwing fallacies at everybody, right? That's the fallacy of irrelevant thesis, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure that when Sye was doing evidential apologetics, he had a lot of atheists throwing fallacies at him. No, that's a fallacy. You're making this fallacy. You're making that fallacy. So that's his pet thing to do now. And I would say that it is a fallacy of premature victory that Sye does here, because as soon as you say, I could be wrong about everything I claim to know, for instance, he says, that's it, debate's over, we're done here. Now, of course, even if you have admitted that, there's nothing to say that you couldn't, A, change your mind after thinking about it a little further, or B, as Dan tried to point out to Sye in the video, realize that you're dealing with incongruent definitions between the two people, right? And so Dan may be saying something not meaning what Sye is interpreting. And so Sye has said that Dan has given up his foundation for any future debates with Sye. This is shock of God style premature victory, right? I mean, shock of God, like say, I've got all these 50 victories, 75 victories, in all these debates. But I'm sure if you talk to the person that he debated, they may not see it the same way. And really, what is the victory here, right? I mean, again, if the goal is supposed to be to win hearts and minds to Christ, I don't understand how saying, you don't get to debate me anymore, I don't understand how that accomplishes this supposed goal. But basically, that, like I said, this is the one-way check valve of Sye's debate tactics, is to say, yeah, once you've said that, you no longer can debate. We can't have a rematch of any sort, where you might say, hey, our definitions are not congruent here. What I meant to say was this, or let's define this more carefully, especially with someone like Dan, who admitted going into the debate that he had only very recently heard about the presuppositional apologetic in the first place. So anyway, I'm going to try and upload, I'll start, the next one I'm going to label as part 2, and it will be actual audio from the debate, the informal talk between Sye and Dan. And what I'm going to try to do is upload one part each week. We'll see how that goes, but please stay tuned for part 2. Thanks for watching. Have a good weekend. One more thing. I always seem to forget something. I guess that's the problem with stream of consciousness uploads. during the discussion of Sir Isaac Newton and Sye Ten denying that he could have any kind of extra biblical divine revelation, Aronra said, you know, you and Sir Isaac Newton have beliefs that contradict, that there's a contradiction here. And Sye kept trying to interject as they were trying to hold him, you know, ask him questions, kept trying to interject, you know, are contradictions absolutely not allowed, and according to your worldview. And I think this is disingenuous myself to suggest somehow that naturalistic worldview can't account for the, you know, contradictions. The reason that, first of all, contradictions are allowed. They just make communication incoherent, difficult, and doesn't get us anywhere towards truth. To say that we could not account for the laws of non-contradiction with the naturalistic worldview assumes a couple of things. I think the first is this whole notion that somehow naturalism sort of rejects any notions of concepts, and that's ridiculous. I don't know where they get that from. This is a little bit of sort of deciding your worldview for you. I certainly don't have any problem with concepts, even if they are immaterial. And there's a couple of great YouTube clips with Sye Ten and Eric Hovind where they talk about that. I'm going to do some commentary on those at some point. The other thing is, you know, it's very easy to account for how we could learn the law of non-contradiction on our own. All you'd have to do is you know, reason at probably something just beyond Neanderthal level and start trying to draw square circles in the sand. You know, I'm not sure, but you know, this is something that's quite within our reasoning realm. You know, as human beings, not something that we need any sort of divine creator to bestow upon us. So I just wanted to point that out. Again, you know, it's not that contradictions aren't allowed. They just make discussion pointless and incoherent. Thanks for watching.